There are still way more Assassin's Creed news to cover coming from the Ubisoft Forward presentation, including the information about the Netflix TV show, the reveals about the upcoming Codename Jade mobile game set in China, and the upcoming final chapter of Eivor's story in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. In the video we're going to have a look at the few confirmations concerning the partnerships with Netflix, the final reveal of the Assassin's Creed mobile developed by Tencent, and all the pretty interesting information from Eivor's final adventure, including some recurring characters, a good deal of modern day content featuring Basim, and Eivor finally recognizing who she is and her connection to Odin. So let's dive in and have a look at all the recent Assassin's Creed news. And we start with the relatively limited news about the Assassin's Creed partnership with Netflix. In fact, during the presentation, executive producer Marc-Alexis Cote discussed the Assassin's Creed Netflix TV show co-developed by Ubisoft, but sadly didn't really add any new information, just reiterating that the show in itself is still in early development, and I'm not too sure if that's a good sign, considering that it was announced back in October of 2020 and it's still in early development. Cote also confirmed that the showrunner will be Jeb Stewart, which had been reported already, before finally confirming that currently it is a single TV show that is in development, not three, and it's a live-action adaptation of Assassin's Creed. Finally, Cote announced an additional project in partnership with Netflix that is a mobile game developed for Netflix platform, but no additional details were provided at this moment, so all in all, no news compared to what we already knew, save from the AC Netflix show being a single and live-action one, the mobile game being in development, and yeah, nothing else. Some more relevant news instead came from the announcement of the first open-world Assassin's Creed game for mobile platforms, currently called Project Jade or Codename Jade. The game will be set in ancient China in 215 BCE, that'd be roughly 200 years before the events of Origins and the creation of the Hidden Ones, and in itself it does look already like a well-developed game, which according to Cote will feature all the classic elements of the Assassin's Creed gameplay, but optimized for the mobile platforms, which of course means touch controls. The trailer showcased the classic shot of an eagle flying over a Chinese town with a huge palace at the top of it, not a lot of NPCs going around to be honest, but a lot of details in the buildings and seemingly different types of rich and poor districts, all of this with some Chinese sounding version of Ezio's family in the background. But in the trailer, the eagle flies off the city into the wild and into a slightly different setting that involves more snow and shows a portion of the Great Wall of China. We can see it continuing over the hills on the right and in the distance, and finally we cut to our main character, to our main assassin, crouched atop a perch of the Great Wall, and our main character is not a he or a she, as this time and for the first time in Assassin's Creed, players will be able to fully create their own character, and I wonder within which limitations, if there's going to be any. In this case, our main character is a man dressed in white and black but with a golden pauldron I think, and he is shown with a close-up that really reminds of Arno's close-up in his first black box mission. Our assassin performs the leap of faith, which allows us to see more about him, and he does look to have some visual elements that are typical of the assassins and the hidden ones, like the white and red robes, the hood, the style of the dress, but this is a little strange because at this time the hidden ones hadn't been officially formed yet, nor their traditions, so I wonder if this is just for visual purposes, but at face value I am so very interested to play as an assassin-like character in a Chinese setting again, this time in an open world game, waiting and hoping for an AC main title set in China at some point. We then saw the logo of the game with some green light coming from the ground and a Jade-like assassin crest matching the name of the game, and Cote continued discussing the game by showcasing a key art showing our main character and a more detailed version of his stunning outfit, including his two swords, a bow and a quiver, and of course the notable but I also think intentional absence of the hidden blade. Cote continued by saying that players will be able to climb and apparently parkour atop the Great Wall of China, perform stealth actions in various cities, engage in combat, and in general exploring ancient China that Cote here defines as vast, so it'll be interesting to see how big the map will be for this game. Also, this game is absolutely pretty much 100% the mobile game developed by China's juggernaut Tencent that was reported by the end of 2020, and we can see that some of the art used back then in a job listing does match at least some of the patterns of the outfit and even the weapons of our main character here. So as we expected, Ubisoft announced this game during their showcase, and it makes even more sense following the recent news citing Tencent raising their stakes and stock within Ubisoft's holding company, meaning also an indirect stake on Ubisoft itself. Lastly, moving to Assassin's Creed Valhalla, we finally got a trailer for the final adventure of Eivor's story called The Last Chapter, which was introduced by the new game director of the post-launch, Gareth Glover. The Last Chapter is not going to be a quest, but a quest arc. It's going to release for free quote-unquote in a few months' time, and it's planned to tie up some of the established storylines of Valhalla, which is something that we already hypothesized in our recent video, and guys, I have to be honest, this looks promising, albeit confusing at times. The trailer for The Last Chapter opens with Eivor sitting down in front of Ravensthorpe, and especially it opens up with Eivor finally recognizing and feeling Odin as part of her. So after 2 years of post-launch content and a lot of complaints by fans, Eivor will finally acknowledge Odin's presence and his genetic memories that, in her words, stretch far into the past, meaning that she also recognizes to have witnessed his own memories during the myth sequences, and while this finally delivers on what the fans have been expecting for quite some time, the visuals here are a little confusing. Eivor is dressed as Odin from the recent mythological sequences. Actually, it's a slightly different outfit which I'd imagine will be obtainable by playing the quest arc, while Odin is dressed as Eivor here. Like I said, it's confusing. I wonder if I'm missing something here or if it's a mishap by the devs. Also, this might be a coincidence, but I feel this is deliberate. Odin here, sitting on a log, is having a very similar, if not the same expression and smile looking at Eivor that the image of Eivor in Basim's head had in the secret modern day ending of Valhalla when Basim sat in front of the campfire. In that scene, it seemed like Basim was acknowledging his own old enemy, and here we have Eivor finally acknowledging her own old enemy and demon, which I believe makes for a very nice comparison. With Valhalla's version of Ezio's family in the background, Eivor finally decides she has done all she could for her people. She was able to give them a home and a town in England, but now Eivor is ready to set for new lands and new adventures, and while this looks epic on paper, with our own character deciding to set a new path for herself and whatnot, this clashes a bit with the Order of the Ancients ending of the main game, where King Alfred did threaten Eivor that eventually England and the Saxons would have prevailed over the Vikings, and anyone who would have stayed on English soil would have become its subject, but in that occasion Eivor slightly mocked the king, and now we see her deciding to leave England, very much leaving Ravensthorpe and the Raven clan behind with no leader other than Sigurd maybe, and against the threat of the Saxons that will likely destroy them all. So not an amazing look on Eivor here, but maybe I'm jumping to conclusions a little too fast, and I do hope that the quest arc will provide enough explanations as to why Eivor is leaving her kin pretty much to die or to be subdued in England. But that's not all for the last chapter, and actually things get even more interesting when we hear Basim's voice from the modern day, who is witnessing Eivor's memories through Layla's animus. In this case, Basim's voice is indeed that of Carlo Rota, so no different actor as it will likely be the case in Mirage, more on that in our trailer breakdown, but nonetheless, this means we might have several dialogues from modern day Basim observing Eivor's deeds as he follows her new journey. Basim is fascinated by how Eivor is dealing with Odin's memories and consciousness differently than how he did. In fact, whereas Basim allowed for Loki's consciousness to take over, Eivor was able to manage to be herself and apparently to even come to terms with Odin's consciousness. From then on, the trailer does show more snippets of the last chapter, all of them pretty intriguing as well, and separated by some Animus Glitches effects. Here we see Eivor with her new outfit featuring an eagle and the assassin crest... Come on, let's not have her join the Hidden Ones now. And she is in front of what seems to be the trigger for a new Animus anomaly. Then we see her talking to several villagers in Ravensthorpe, perhaps explaining the motivations for her new journey. Then we see her seemingly back to Alrekstad, the main city in Norway that we saw in the early stages of the main game, where another Animus anomaly-like prompt seems to be located. Then a look at the cloister of a monastery, this might be Winchester, and a reappearance of King Alfred himself, a very strange cross that looks more Isu than human, and through the Animus glitches we can see that the cross is both taken down and then erected again, showing different events and maybe different possibilities. Then we see more of Eivor paying her goodbyes to the people of Ravensthorpe, and we see her with her brother Sigurd supposedly in Alrekstad, which I'd imagine makes Sigurd fleeing Ravensthorpe the canon choice in the game. Then a new sequence in Norway where after many years Eivor is going to meet King Harald Fairhair again, and let's not forget that he is the Asgardian sage, or shall we say reborn version of the Isu Freyr, so we might have another meeting of the minds between two reborn Isu, with Eivor now hopefully knowing that she is the reincarnation of Odin. And finally we got the most shocking of pictures, that is a hologram of Basim from the modern day overlooking Eivor's memories, and I'd imagine that the recently leaked Basim Interact functions shared by Andy Reloads will actually be these blue interaction points that Eivor will be able to find in the world, and which this time might not be Animus anomalies, but actually situations where Basim from the modern day might stop the simulation and Eivor might disappear, leaving room for him to observe it and maybe digitally interact with it to gain more information. So yeah, a lot of pretty interesting teasers and news on Valhalla's side as well, even though this means no announcements and no teasers for part 2 of the Tombs of the Fallen activity that last time around was still planned to be released this fall, and as we already discussed in the last few days, no crossover with Assassin's Creed Origins, which has been debunked recently by executive producer Marc-Alexis Cote. Then again, all these news were just the tip of the iceberg of all the Assassin's Creed reveals and announcements that were dropped at Ubisoft Forward, and I can't shake the feeling that the last chapter will also act as a direct teaser and lead in to the upcoming Assassin's Creed Mirage game starring Basim, which has been fully presented to the world and for which in a dedicated video we have gathered all the recent news, including some info about stealth, parkour and assassinations coming from an exclusive presentation that we attended. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in our next video.